Greetings and welcome to week 11 in our Genesis Convene class. Hope you've recovered from the time of travel and being here in Kansas City and are fully energized and back on track. Let me suggest that you do be giving attention to the exegesis paper. If you have questions about the appropriateness of a passage you've chosen, feel free to email me. I have had a computer crash, but I'm digging, and so several days having no access to email, and so I'm way behind, but I'll be digging out on those sorts of things. If you sent me something in the last week or so and haven't gotten a reply, feel free to send again. Some evidence, I think, that there was things going wrong inside the computer before it came close to exploding in class this week. Fortunately, it didn't, and no one was hurt, and all I've done is lose a bunch of stuff. Hopefully no emails. So feel free to get to work on your exegesis paper, and in particular, some of you are going to be needing to be looking for resources, commentaries, etc., that will be satisfactory to help you do a good job. Okay. The text that we're working on for this week is chapter 18, the beginning of chapter 18 through chapter 23, I think verse 10 maybe. Primary focus will be on up through the sacrifice of Isaac for us. Want you to note, among other things, be attentive to cultural customs. For example, in chapter 18, the way in which Abraham hosts the three visitors who come to his tent. The steps, the description, everything is very, very close to the kind of thing you would find in ancient Near Eastern hospitality practices. And so this, as I think we mentioned the week together on the last day, this fits into that sort of time slot between about 1600 BC and 1900, 2000 BC. You'll also find the ongoing issue of Hagar and Sarah coming to a head finally after the birth of Isaac. I think that you need to give attention, back to chapter 18, one more thing. This extended conversation between Abraham and the messengers, who, by the by, in much of Christian history, one of them, the lead spokesman, was often interpreted as Jesus, a view robustly rejected by modern Old Testament scholarship. But be attentive to the language, and it's the kind of language that you can see why it is that, in essence, you have God incarnate, and why it is then that through Christian history, in many, many instances, you found folks interpreting that in terms of Jesus. Certainly no one in the Old Testament would have understood it that way, and that's where I think our starting point should be. But don't be too hasty to treat as fools people who come to that conclusion theologically through the description of the visitor. But note in particular the way the conversation goes, in which Abraham bargains with God and essentially reduces the kind of the plateau or the turning point for the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah from 50 people down to 10 people. And so give attention to that and how it unfolds. Chapter 19, when the two travelers who come to be called angels then move into down to Sodom and Gomorrah and end up in Lot's house. Obviously, all of you know the issue of homosexuality is a front burner plate issue in our culture. And so you need to give careful attention to the way the homosexual practice or invitation is couched, what is involved in it, what isn't said, and what is said. because as you respond to this issue, you need to be aware of biblical texts that deal with it. This is one of those, and you need to be careful not to say more than the biblical text says, but to be able to articulate fairly what the implication of the biblical text is also. So give attention to that. Then the central issue of chapter 21 that you should give attention to is the birth of Isaac. And you should know Isaac's name means laughter. And so the joke is on Abraham and Sarah, particularly on Sarah, and yet how that precipitates the crisis with Hagar and Ishmael, and the way in which Abraham responds to that. I think we gave sufficient attention to the sacrifice of Isaac on the last day of class. And so we're about to finish what's sometimes called the Abraham cycle. Do give attention still to Borgman and how he is interpreting this developing interaction between God and Abraham, and if we can say, the climax or the desired outcome finally that we see in Abraham's response to God's command to sacrifice Isaac, the test that he is put under. Hope this will be a profitable week for you, and that there's both instructive, illustrative, and imperative kinds of texts in this collection from chapter 18 through 22. And I hope it will be a time of both enjoying and learning, but also of deepening your commitment to God. Thanks.